welcome to my channel, The Bird's Nest. As some of you may know, I lost my daughter Tila at 22 and a half weeks, and after she passed, I found a lot of comfort in books about losing your baby. So I wanted to share with you guys every month which books really helped me. So the book I chose for March is called Grieving, the Child I Never Knew by Kathe Wunnenberg. I'm probably saying her name wrong, but the reason I chose this one for March is because throughout there's like really cute illustrations, and it seems to have like a little bunny theme, which is what I associate with my daughter Tila, who I lost in March. So I just thought this would be the perfect book for March. This book is actually a devotional, and it's a religious book. I'm not religious myself, but I did find a lot of hope and help within this book, even though it's a religious book. A lot of people will be turned off by that if you're not religious, but the way that I looked at it was every time like God was mentioned or something religious, I kind of look at it as like the universe, and like transition between religious to spiritual instead. The author of this book lost 4 babies herself, and she lost them on some really tough days. Her husband's birthday was one of them, and Christmas Eve was another. So there are some special chapters in here for those special days, like Mother's Day, your birthday, your due date, all of those things. They have like special little, they call them devotions. Obviously that's a religious word, but for me it's kind of like just something special that you can tell yourself on those really hard days, and anybody can benefit from that. It's a very hopeful book, and that's what it did for me. Like, it helped me begin to start to see the light, that there was a light at the end of the tunnel, and that's something that I hopefully could get to, just like she got to also. So when you open the book, immediately inside the hardcovers, the front and the back, are the names of all these different babies that passed, and I think that that's really, really special to include them in here. Now, there are some stories from other lost families in this book, as well as her own, and I don't know if these babies are their babies or not. It's not just about her baby, it's about all of our babies. So for example, the book that we reviewed in January, it helps you when you feel so alone, like feel this kind of companionship from other families. I feel like this book helps you feel that companionship kind of like from like beyond that. Like you have the companionship from people, and then there's something like beyond that that you need to still feel like you're part of this world. All of the chapters are pretty short, so like if you just wanted to read 1 chapter a day and like just meditate on that, and then each chapter has journaling at the end, and the journaling is really short too. It's like 3 to 5 questions each, and it just kind of like helps you come into yourself again, and how are you feeling, and like really dive deep into your emotions. So for example, in the Forgiving Others chapter, it says, do you blame anyone for your loss or for hurting you? Chapter 1 starts out really powerfully with a bang, and it's about hiding from your grief. And I think that that's really important to start out with, because that's like kind of our first instinct all the time. So I really like how she started out with that and like just got that out of the way. And one of the questions in the journal section at the end of that chapter is, are you ready now to take a few steps forward in grieving your child? If so, fill in the date below and say this out loud. Today, the date. I am choosing not to hide my grief, but to step forward in the journey to grieve my child. I love how there's a whole section on facing the truth, because there's so many different truths to face when you lose your child. And also like kind of, well, when I lost my daughter Tila, one thing I took away from that was that I always wanted to live in my truth. Like, I am never gonna pretend to be someone I'm not. I'm always gonna be myself, and I'm always gonna say what I feel, mean what I say, and that's one of the things that I took away from having Tila. And I really liked that there was a chapter on that. I was really interested to see how a woman of faith would address how mean people can be to you and the mean things people can say, because I feel like a lot of religious people always tend towards you have to forgive, and obviously that's the best case scenario, but when you're deep in it, like asking you to forgive somebody else who's being so mean to you in like the worst possible scenario that you could be in your life, it feels like an impossible thing, and it felt like at that time that I could not do that. So I was really interested to see how she would handle that. So she asked questions like, people often make hurtful comments because they are uninformed. They may not fully understand that loss is loss, and that you cannot compare how long you were pregnant or had a child to the level of grief you may feel. What could others say that would validate your loss? So I think like she acknowledges it, you know, that it's a problem and that we all face it, and that she does talk about forgiveness, but it's not just like forgive. She's like, no, like this, you need to, you know, maybe sometimes you don't need these kinds of people in your life right now, or how can you work on it in yourself? How can you explain to these people how you're feeling so that they can understand you? And if they don't understand you, then that becomes on them and not on you. There's also a whole chapter on depression, which is also really obviously normal after you lose a baby. And I really think that that's really important too, just like give it a whole chapter, because just to say, oh, it's my hormones, or oh, like everybody feels like this after they have a baby, it's not giving it enough acknowledgement that depression is a real thing and it needs to be acknowledged and taken care of, because it can spiral out of control, and religious people get depressed, non-religious people get depressed. It's just like this normal thing that happens, but also something that you really need to look at and admit, maybe I'm depressed, and maybe, you know, I didn't have a normal birth. My baby died. That's not normal hormones. This might be something else. She also touches on how it's okay to be happy and sad, which I think is not something that we often think about, that two opposite things can be true at one time. Like that's hard after you lose your baby, to think that you're so sad and you want to keep being sad, because to not be sad almost feels like you're moving on without your baby, and how could you possibly move on without your baby? And it kind of transforms into this thing of like, you're sad, you're always gonna be sad, that doesn't go away, but you find moments that will make you happy also. You're still carrying around this sadness because you lost your baby, but there's happy things in life that you might be able to enjoy again. In the book, the author writes about how she forgot that it was her son's due date, and she didn't realize how sad she was. But then she says, I continue to ponder. Does he know I almost forgot about today? Does he know that I love him and miss him? What is it like for him to be in God's presence and have no suffering? Suddenly I realized that Jake was staring at me. Mom, why do you look mostly happy now? Well, I'm happy today because our baby is in heaven, but I'm sad because he would have been born today. I could tell by my son's silence that he was pondering my comment as he waited at the red light. Then Jake shouted, Mom, it's like being at a yellow light. You're not red and you're not green, but you're a little of each. So you can be happy and sad at the same time. Like when my daughter was born, it was the happiest day of my life, and it was the saddest day of my life. I got to meet my baby. I got to hold my baby in my arms, but at the same time, she passed away. So it's like, it's very hard for people to understand that like, you want to be happy about your baby because it's your baby. A baby is a happy thing. That's your freaking baby. But on the other hand, you lost your baby and it's the most heartbreaking thing. The book also touches on how husbands and wives grieve differently, which we've talked about before. And it's not just husbands and wives, it's like who's ever really carrying the baby and whoever is the supportive partner, they might have two totally different experiences. There is a whole section on trying to forgive others, which is really, really hard. And that I feel like might take the most work out of anything. And then there's a whole chapter on forgiving yourself. And I think they went in that order, but I really feel like forgiving yourself is the first order of business. And really, before you worry about anybody else in the world, you should really worry about yourself and your baby and what you can do to heal yourself and forgive yourself. There's a chapter about relating to each other as lost moms. It's really important for us to all come together and be there for each other. And this is such a specific thing to relate to somebody on that it might be hard to find somebody in your inner circle to relate with anymore, and that's how I felt. And I felt that the only people I related with anymore were people that knew what it was like to lose their child. We go through what we go through to help others go through what we went through. That's a quote from the author, and I think it's really true. Towards the end of the book, there's a chapter on, it's called Holding Hands with Your Future, which I found really interesting because after I lost Tila, I felt like me and my future were two different things, and like I couldn't possibly have one, and I didn't even want to think about it. But the concept of holding hands with your future and kind of saying we are in this together, I am my future is me, and walking together towards the future instead of feeling so separate from it. And I really like the tips that she gives in this book to kind of feel that again, to kind of feel like the future is your future and kind of manifesting the new future that you want in this new reality that you have. And then the last part of this book, I keep calling them chapters, but I think they're called devotions and parts. But the last part of this book is all about sharing your story and how healing that can be. And I can say from firsthand experience through Three Little Birds, that has been an extremely, extremely healing part of my journey. And it's kind of like what we're doing here with each other. And if you're ready to share yours, like I would love to hear it. And thank you for listening to mine. So if this book interests you, I would check it out. I think I got it on Amazon. And, for me, if I could take one little bit out of an entire book that can help me, I'm reading it. So thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.